to discuss the State of the Union, not Barack Obama and the USA, but specifically the African Union, which recently held its 12th summit in Addis Ababa. Is it an organization really worthy of the name? And if it isn't, how realistic is the idea of a United States of Africa, the dream of many Pan-Africanists since the days of Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah? And now the obsession of the new AU chairman, the Libyan president Muammar Gaddafi. With me in the studio to discuss this and to respond to your calls and emails are Sylvie Aboah-Bradwell, who is the London International Coordinator of the Centre for Democracy and Development, and Ayo Johnson, who is a broadcaster and commentator on African affairs. Welcome to you both. Sylvie Aboah-Bradwell, you followed this summit. What did you expect of it, and were your expectations met at all?
Well, my expectations were not met in the sense that I will not have elected Gaddafi as chairman. I was expecting a strong stance from African leaders to recognize that Gaddafi is not a credible voice anymore.
Why is he not a credible voice?
Because Gaddafi is not really representative of Africa in the 21st century, in the sense that he is the stereotypical African leader who has been in power for over 30 years, and really he has absolutely no trust in his people. He doesn't want to let his people free. And not only that, he is misusing African history and African tradition.
But he says that his is exactly the kind of leadership that Africa needs, that the continent and some of the countries are riven by tribalism, and democracy, Western-style democracy, doesn't really work in Africa. So what we need is more Gaddafis, not less. And he's a Pan-Africanist.
No, we need leaders who respect African traditions, in the sense that he calls himself King of Kings.
Well, 7 traditional rulers said he was King of Kings.
And the first thing we have to remember is that Africa has always been democratic. In every single African village, you are going to encounter something called the discussion tree. And that means the tradition of freedom that the kings and everybody else had to listen to the people. And that's something that has been lost by the colonization. And if we are to rebuild Africa, we have to go back to trusting the people as before. And now we have young leaders emerging in countries such as Ghana, where they respect the will of the people. And we have to go back to that in order to rebuild Africa.
All right. Let me bring in Ayo Johnson. First of all, the Gaddafi question. I mean, he has been talking about a United States of Africa probably longer than any other current serving African ruler. Why is he wrong for this?
Well, I disagree. He shouldn't be wrong for that. I think it's a marvelous opportunity for Africa to engage and come together. I think this is stemmed predominantly from the perspective that Africa needs to survive. It's one of survival. We've realized that the new world economy, the globalization, has not worked in the interest of the poor, and it hasn't worked in the interest of Africa. Let's look at the issue of trade, basic trade. A lot of our African farmers would like to trade overseas. They can't. They're met with high tariffs. Western nations, on the other hand, they subsidize their farmers. They can overproduce, and the unit cost of production means they can have massive numbers of goods and services which cannot be sold in their markets. These products are dumped on the African market. It demoralizes, disenfranchises our people. It means that those markets
listen, no, I mean, look, why is it, though, that Gaddafi is the person upon whom this United States of Africa has been pinned? Why is he the person who is most likely to drive it forward? I mean, Sylvie says he's not democratic in his own country, so we shouldn't really be looking towards him as a symbol of this.
Well, no, but Africa is looking for any leader that can take it up. The fact is, other leaders have not been able to step up. And in fact, if you think about it, the challenges of Africa, HIV, the trade issues that I just mentioned, environmental issues to do with climate change, and that of the fact of corruption, which is endemic in all these countries. We need African solutions to be solved by Africans themselves. And there's nothing wrong with Gaddafi coming up with this formula.
Even if, as Sylvie says, he isn't really respecting African traditions. And he's a bully, and he has actually helped to foment lots of unrest in other countries using his wealth.
Well, where I would have a problem is if Gaddafi decides that he should be the head of that organization or the new
President of the United States of Africa.
There we go. There we go. If he decides to do that, then I've got a problem. But in bringing it to the fore, championing it, there's nothing wrong with that. Africa needs leaders like him. And for all intents and purposes, Gaddafi has his critics, but his economy has worked to an extent. And we need a bit of that.
Africa, I mean, Gaddafi has his critics, but his economy has worked. His is a template.
Now, two things. First of all, I am not against the idea of the African Union. All I am criticizing is the fact that Gaddafi presents himself as the spokesperson because he is not credible. And the main proof that he is not credible is the way in which he has been elected. Normally, it is an open election and unanimous. It hasn't been the case. Why? Because even the African leaders, imperfect as they are, have recognized that he is not really a credible voice. The second thing now is absolutely we need the African Union. We need it. You have made an important point in relation to trade. People usually talk about the Asian miracle, but what nobody says is that Asian countries trade at 60% among themselves, something that we haven't got in Africa. We haven't got, I don't think we even reached 10% of inter-regional trade. So
but in terms of the notion then of a United States of Africa moving from this African Union that we have now, would you support that, at least the ideal?
Yes, of course I support that, but in order to sell the idea to the people, in order to make it work, what we need are people who practice what they say.
Okay. Ayo, quickly.
But Henry, there's a massive issue which is to do with Africa's very poor, strapped for cash, and some of the loans agreements that we've got with the IMF and the World Bank, those have got to be renegotiated, and they're unlikely to do so if individual countries try to do it by themselves. We've got to come as a collective and therefore speak with one voice, and I think the rest of the world, including these institutions, would respect us even further.
All right, Sylvia.